Hey, what's good? Thanks for clicking on another Pay Me No Mind video. And we're going to get into some entertainment. I've been meaning to get back to a couple of shows or movies that I've been watching. I actually haven't seen too many movies lately. But definitely wanted to get back into dealing with some of the different television series that I'm following or that I like. So I could have done like 2 or 3 different videos, but I realized that, you know, people rarely come back for part 2s and part 3s. Virtually zero on part 3. But I want to talk about Showtime's Escape at Dannemora. That one is getting ready to wind down, I believe. And then season 2 of Counterpart, which I believe is on the 3rd episode of season 2. And then I want to touch quickly on HBO's The Deuce, which just wrapped up maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. Wrapped up its 2nd season. And just a couple thoughts on that. And then Narcos Mexico, which has been out there for a while, but I just had a chance to knock that one out and just had a couple of thoughts on that. So, Escape at Dannemora. Just wondering where people are with this. Like I said, a new one from Showtime. Obviously, it's not going to be a multi-season show, which is kind of dope. I really like a lot of these one-off projects that a lot of different people are doing. Ben Stiller is directing Escape at Dannemora, and I believe he's also one of the executive producers or part of the team of producers. So it's just really dope that he's doing something that's not comedy or rom-com related altogether. And obviously it stars big hitters such as Benicio del Toro. It's also featuring Patricia Arquette. She plays Telly Mitchell, who is the woman who she's been convicted and served time for helping these 2 guys escape, these 2 inmates escape. I believe it's the Clinton facility that's in Dannemora, New York. Clinton Correctional. You listen to hip hop enough, Capone and Noriega, maybe Nas here and there. You know about Dannemora or Clinton. And then also there's Paul Dano, who is a good actor, but a guy that after a number of roles of his, maybe he's that good of an actor that I have a strong distaste for that dude. If I ever met him in person, I might not be too fond of Paul Dano, but he is also in it playing inmate Sweat. I know that's his last name, but his first name might be David Sweat. Let me double check here real quick. Yeah, David Sweat. Benicio plays Richard Matt. So really quickly, my heart goes out to Lyle Mitchell. With this project right here, the biggest loser in this is Lyle Mitchell, who plays Telly Mitchell's or Patricia Arquette's husband. Wow. I mean, if your wife went and did all of the stuff that Ben Stiller and his team say she did, is that right? Saying that she did, you got to be pretty embarrassed. I mean, some of the scenes between her and Benicio, or between Telly Mitchell and inmate Sweat and inmate Matt, some of the scenes are just graphic and just real gritty. And it just wonders, you have to wonder how much of that is poetic license, and what was actually corroborated. Some of the sexual scenes, I'll just say it's a scene where inmate Matt, she runs a sewing shop in the prison, and she has a room full of inmates who are her employees, and they have a storage room where material is kept, sewing material, needles, I guess, threading or thread, and they're constantly moving in deliveries and supplies and whatnot, and she has the inmates come in the back storage room or storeroom, and they do their thing. And it starts out with inmate Sweat being her supervisor, and he's getting the cookie. And then some events transpire where he gets removed from the sewing detail, and it leaves behind inmate Matt, Benicio del Toro, and then they kick off a relationship. So, but anyway, it's a scene where it's so embarrassing, man. It's so gritty, but inmate Matt says, "Hey, spit on my hand." You can fill in the blank from whatever you want to make of it. But you know, Joyce Mitchell, the real Joyce Mitchell, has come out and said that Stiller is a lying or a liar bastard, I believe is what she said in some of the articles that I saw on it. But it's not so much that it's a slow build to the series, but you got to fill up. I believe it's going to be 8 total episodes, with the finale being two hours. And so, like I said, I think the finale is this Sunday. The one thing that kind of threw me off is the show was going along nicely, and then we hit episode 7, and it flashes back to how we got here earlier in the lives of Richard Matt, David Sweat, and Telly Mitchell. And I guess the way it's done is a little disturbing or different. In part 7, part 7 is just called part 7. But it just shows how the cases or the crimes that resulted in the 2 inmates being in prison, and how it explores kind of how Telly Mitchell, how maybe she's willing to do the things that she's done outside of her marriage to Lyle. And it's no narration, it's no setup, like it's no opening it's no opening phrase or text on the screen that even sets you up for what you're watching, and it just kind of dives into it, and it's some pretty more gritty stuff, and you know, very unsavory activity going on between younger Sweat and younger Matt. Totally different crimes, totally different situations and everything. But because I think Matt was in jail, he was in prison 4 or 5 years before Sweat got there. But I guess and then I was thinking about it, like, why did they do this like that? But if you watch a lot of series, usually around the last 2 to 3 episodes after they've reeled you in, they kind of go back. A lot of them is kind of following a pattern where they go back to some kind of flashback and show you some background or backstory to what you've been watching. So I guess that's why they did this. And then my last theory before I get ready to move on to Counterpart is maybe after watching the first 6 episodes or something, maybe you've developed some kind of soft spots for the 2 inmates, or you're rooting for them because they don't seem like horrible guys. You know, they're not involved in a lot of illegal activity in the prison, or, you know, affiliated with gangs and whatnot. So maybe you kind of have a soft spot for them, or you're rooting for them to get out because you know that a prison break occurs. So I don't know if they just went back and threw this in to kind of bring you back to reality, that these are 2 very, very rotten and sick guys, violent guys. And so I was thinking maybe, you know, along the lines of Shawshank Redemption, you're really rooting for Andy Dufresne, you know, to escape for all the wrongs that were done to him, and the reason why he was in, you know, the reason for him even being in prison was just, you know, he got railroaded, or unfortunate series of events resulted him in serving, you know, this life sentence. So that's all I can really think, is maybe it's to give you a real dose of reality of, you know, these guys, these aren't good guys or thoughtful, creative guys who were trying to get to their freedom. These are pretty jacked up dudes who deserve to be where they were for as long as, you know, they need to be there. And no spoiler here. It's already in the news, but do remember that only one of, I guess I won't tell the whole thing, but only one of them actually returns to prison to finish out their life sentence. So, but Dannemora is a pretty dope project, man. It's whereas a lot of people are into science fiction and the superhero stuff and all of that, I really just like good regular stories about regular people. And if you watch this escape and how this thing comes together, it's very, it's amazing what desperation, can do, and the resilience it can create in a human being. So that's that, man. Dannemora. Like I said, I believe the finale is this Sunday night. I believe 2 hours is what it's looking for. So I won't tell you where they are in the story as you get into it, other than coming off of the heels of this flashback episode that was just a little bit weird. And then also quickly, Telly Mitchell, her backstory, man. She's a wild woman. Wild woman. Anyway, Counterpart is probably the dopest show on Starz, which might not be that hard because Starz doesn't have a deep catalog of current shows. So, but Counterpart stars J.K. Simmons. It is science fiction, but it's done in such a different way. And I don't think I got to touch on do a video on season 1, but it's one of my favorite shows. And J.K. Simmons is a phenomenal actor. Speaks for himself with him. But the rest of the show is a lot of European actors and actresses. And like I said, it's based in Germany. I don't have a whole lot to say here except season 1 was excellent. And then, it was well-paced. You saw a lot. You learned a lot. You learned about the backstory. You learned about the ongoing plot that was being carried out by the other side or the other world. And you learned a lot of good characters. I thought they killed off 1 or 2 characters a little too quickly, but, it's neither here nor there. But the disappointment about season 1 was how the finale ended up. And so coming into season 2, I was anxious to see how the action resumes or how the story resumes. So through the first 3 episodes, very slow start. However, it's funny that it's doing very well with its Rotten Tomatoes score. I believe that's at 99%. If you can check out stuff on RottenTomatoes.com, just to get as a baseline is what I kind of use it for. But yeah, they added the sister that played the black lady on Get Out, who was the housemaid. She's a new face on the show that comes over from, I believe, the FBI. But yeah, I don't want to get too much into the story. Feel free to make a comment if you're checking out Counterpart. I guess, like I said, I only mentioned it because season 2 is just getting off to a very slow start. But it is beginning to pick up a little bit and gradually get into what the central plot of season 2 is, I believe. So it is picking up. It's just been real weird because Howard, the original Howard, J.K. Simmons, his character has really been out of the pocket and is kind of slowly being reintroduced into what's going on in season 2. So maybe that's why it's a little slow, because nothing is going on with Howard Silk. And then Howard Prime, who is in Howard Silk's place in the real world, his wife has, came out of her coma, and she's kind of figuring out what she is. And we're kind of learning at the same time, we're learning out exactly what her role is in the terrorist plot that took place in season 1. So that's really all I can say about Counterpart. Somewhat of a slow start to season 2. Now, moving on to these last 2 shows, recaps of those, try to get through these pretty quickly. The Deuce on HBO. See how I'm keeping it Showtime, Starz, HBO, and Netflix. Kind of getting coming full circle here. But the Deuce wrapped up, like I said, maybe a month ago, maybe even more, 5 weeks ago or something. But the Deuce, surprisingly, it has a very high Rotten Tomato score as well. I think it's at 100%. Looks like the finale might have went down to 91%. I thought it was 10 episodes, so maybe that wasn't even the finale. But the Deuce stars James Franco, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Lawrence Gilliard Jr., which I always shout out to my Wire alumni, The Wire. And then it's another Wire actor in there, and Chris from the crew, from Marlowe's crew. Slim Charles, or Tall Charles, is in there. The Deuce is solid. I do want to, in case you don't know, the Deuce has only been renewed for a final 3rd season. So there is going to be a season 3 of the Deuce. And it's just kind of interesting because what's left at this point? All the pimps are gone. I don't know if you know what the Deuce is about, but it's about the subject is the beginnings of pornography on the East Coast, or in New York. And in season 2, well, I don't want to get into the whole recap, but like I said, all the pimps are dead. So season 1, we lost Reggie Love, who was played by the front man of The Roots and Black Thought, Tariq Trotter. We lost him in season 1 for the fans of the street people, or the street element. But in season 2, we lose Hot Rod, played by Method Man, and then CC, who was played by this British actor who was pretty decent. But both of those guys are out of here. And then, so if that was one of your favorite aspects of season 1, was the pimps and what was going on, or if you watched it, the role of the pimp was heavily impacted as the women moved from the street to the parlors, and then to the sneak peek, or the peak show racket backed by the mob or the mafia. And then once they got into doing pornography, the role of the pimps changed, significantly. So I think that's part of the problem with the Deuce, is that there's not a lot of positive stuff going on for you to really root for, besides Lawrence Gilliard's character, who is a rising New York police officer who becomes a detective, I believe, in the second season. So the other thing that's that's troubling me with the Deuce, and me being like a full-blown fan for it, or even a stan for it, is the fact that there aren't many, despite this being a David Simon executive produced show, and then George Pelecanos, who did both of those guys were, The Wire was their main hit. But it's not a lot of memorable scenes in the Deuce. It's just not. And it's not a lot of memorable lines, that we got from The Wire, with all of us that reenact these, lines from The Wire, whether it be in the barbershop, or, in the waiting room, on break, at lunch, or what have you. It's just not a lot of lines in this show to really be a fan of. And so, and maybe it's a huge cast. They're covering a lot of ground, and it's like some stuff is just being lost, or not being focused on. The one dope thing from this season, though, is that one of the pimps gets involved in acting in adult films, which early on had way more acting involved. But the muscle dude I was telling you, the gangster from Marlowe's crew, which I don't have his name in front of me here, but he played the character Chris on The Wire for about 2 years. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Damn, they don't even have my man's name on here? That's kind of disrespectful. Oh, Ginga Akinagbe. Akinagbe. I'm Larry Brown is his name, Larry. So that was the other pimp who was involved was Larry Brown, and he moves over to becoming an adult film star. So, but the one dope thing of this season is that all the women are kind of the working girls. Everybody's decimated by cocaine, substance abuse, except for Maggie Gyllenhaal's character, who's becoming miraculously. She's developing into this dope adult film writer and director and producer. So, but the one dope thing happens with downtown Larry Brown, and that one of his main women, Dominique Fishback, who plays Darlene, this is one of the most memorable lines, is that all the women start falling off, whether it's drugs, whether they just want to do something different, they're just tired. The streets has just chewed them up and spit them out. And one by one, several of them are the ones that aren't advancing their career in adult film, the ones who are left to kind of find their way in along a new line, a way of earning a living. The main one is Darlene, and she comes back to Larry once she leaves him, and she says that, pimping and hoeing, or being a prostitute, is all about acting. And she said once she saw Larry acting on set, she could never go back to being his hoe. Sorry, it's the story. But I thought that was one of the dopest scenes in the whole thing, because she was creeping out with her suitcase in the morning, leaving the hoe house, I guess. The spot where Larry and all his women, which was down to like one or two women after Darlene left. But he caught her in the hallway, and he had been beating her earlier, in the first season, and intimidating her and all of this stuff. And here she's so empowered to go off, and I think she was taking like some kind of entry-level college course or something, but she was starting to work retail, and she just walked off, and he didn't even put up a fight to keep her. So I thought that was one of the best scenes. I guess another one would be Gyllenhaal. Once her movie that she makes, she gets all this notoriety as being, making this very great adult film, and maybe even a transcendent adult film. She goes and she's feeling herself. She's traveled to LA for like the adult movie awards, adult film movie awards and stuff. And then she comes back home, and her father has figured out what her career is, which he was already, he already knew that she was a working girl. So now that she's into pornography, anyway, that's maybe a touching or heartfelt scene too. So the Deuce, like I said, not many memorable scenes or lines. And then I just hit on my last part, which is, I guess, one of the redeeming qualities or storylines in the entire series is the career of Candy, which it seems like season 3 could primarily focus on her, because she's like the only thing left, except for James Franco, who's playing a pair of twin brothers, and one of the brothers is trying to get from underneath the thumb of he's a club owner or manager, and he's so good at managing bars and nightclubs, but he wants to leave that life and go back to something more simpler and not have the mafia, running his life. And then lastly, Narcos in Mexico, season 4. I never thought, this show could make it this many seasons, especially once we saw the fall and the death of Pablo Escobar in season 2. You just didn't think Narco. And then, I can't remember the actor's name, but Hal Hoybrook, I believe, who was in Predators, the reboot of Predators a few months ago, which I still haven't seen. With him leaving after season 2, and then Pena, his partner, leaving after season 3, you kind of didn't know how they could shake this thing up and get it back out there. But Narcos Mexico, it does its thing. It brings on Michael Pena, who's been in, I know he was in The Shooter, but he comes in as a DEA agent from California. You know, he speaks Spanish, so obviously he's able, and he's Mexican, so he can, you know, move in the city a lot better than the other DEA agents who are white men that can't get around in the city as easily or blend in as easily as he can. So I'm not gonna keep you long here, man. The one thing about Narcos, when I just said memorable lines and memorable scenes, damn near every scene is a memorable line or a memorable scene for the cartel leaders. That's one slick thing that's in, and I've heard different things about Mexican culture and how business happens, you know, norms and whatnot of how, you know, negotiations happen in Mexico and so what's acceptable and unacceptable. I've heard some different things and learned some different things in that in school and for my job. But yeah, the new bad guy is Diego Luna, who plays Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo. And like I said, his conversations with his uncle, I believe, who is Don Neto, who's played by Joaquin Cosio, just some very profound business discussions, expansion, negotiation, product, you know, product mix, just all types of interesting product talk, you know, marketing talk for, you know, the trafficking and sale of weed and cocaine. And so, yeah, these are just some eloquent speaking businessmen with a savage penchant for problem solving and methods and negotiation. And, you know, like I said, Michael King. And in this one, Diego Luna is, you know, he's bringing together the Dons or the plazas of Mexico to help put together the largest, you know, in a contrast to Colombia, who was dealing in cocaine. He just comes in trying to deal marijuana with him and his brother Rafa, who's a very interesting character in this one. But the dope thing, I guess, in bringing this back together, when I was first listening to hip hop and learning about, you know, marijuana and hearing the references in music was, and they didn't spend a lot of time on this, but Rafa, Diego Luna's brother, actually developed this strain to where I guess it was only female plants. And so there wasn't a lot of sticks and seeds and branches and whatnot. So just getting into the science of that, how it was easier to ship, and the fact that they needed this immense amount of territory to farm and harvest this stuff, and what they created and what government, Mexican and the DEA that was working in Mexico, they sat back and allowed all of this, like 11,000 acres or something. I don't know. It was a phenomenal thing that they had going on out in the middle of the desert. But then the plot twists or thickens once Felix decides to get in bed. He wants more money. Already making $30 million a week on marijuana. But then he goes and gets involved with the Colombian cartels, which the funny thing or crazy thing here is that we get reintroduced to the guy that played Pablo Escobar from seasons 1 and 2. And so once he gets into that expansion, things get out of control, and you know, it enables some different things take place, and enables the findings of Kiki, Michael Pena's character, Kike Camarena, to finally catch enough attention with Washington D.C. and the you know, the leaders of the DEA down there in Mexico, to where things are going so unchecked. There's so much money involved that they got to do something. You can't keep just playing nice and accepting payoffs and whatever. Things actually happen. So, Narcos Mexico, season 4, probably just as strong as the rest of them. I won't get into too many of the finale and all of that. Just enjoy it. Let me know what your thoughts are on it. And then the other standout part of Narcos, which, you know, the funny thing is with these different series, you know, something like Starz Power, you know, it's a chance for black actors and actresses to have job security. Here with something like a major title such as Narcos allows, you know, Mexican and South American actors to have a great job security. And then, you know, something like Showtime's Homeland keeps, you know, actors and actresses of Middle Eastern descent. It keeps them with job security as they keep, you know, dealing with counter-terrorism and terrorism and whatnot. But the one thing is the introduction of Miss Teresa Ruiz in Narcos. She looks fabulous. Check her out. It's just for the fellas, a note for the fellas. Hey, but look, I'm going to get on out of here. I could have live streamed this, but, you know, it is what it is. Like I said, it's just a quick movie minute for Pay Me No Mind. Not even movie, but TV, entertainment. So the majority of you probably aren't still here, going on 32 minutes. But like I said, if I would have broke this into a series of different videos, it would have been the same 2 or 3 people that's gonna watch it in its entirety anyway. So again, you know, please subscribe to the channel, leave some comments, let me know, you know, your thoughts or feedback on the shows that I've mentioned. Let me know if you're checking out, you know, if you're on board for the rest of season 2 of Counterpart. We'll get back together on the escape at Dannemora once we check out this weekend's finale. And then let me know what your thoughts are on, you know, the handling or the show running of Deuce, and, you know, what we could possibly expect in season 3. And then Narcos, if you watched Narcos Mexico, you see at the end of it, they do announce that it's been greenlit already for a season 5. So that's that. This is Wood, the host of the Pay Me No Mind podcast that's still on hiatus, and then the host and voice of the Bite Down Boxing podcast, which is a separate playlist here on Pay Me No Mind. So again, like I said, if you're into some of this stuff, please subscribe to the channel and feel free to you know, holler at me in some way. I'm out. Peace.